The stars stretched endlessly, sparkling like cold fire across the black canvas of space. On the small distant planet of Virelia, disaster had already arrived. Cities were burning, skies were choked with smoke and debris. The Virelian fleet, once proud and disciplined, lay shattered in orbit. Their enemies, a relentless and technologically superior force, had left nothing but ruin in their wake. Panic gripped the Virelian people, fear twisting into despair. Their leaders huddled on a command ship, trembling as they realized the truth. They were alone, powerless, and facing extinction. In the darkest hour, hope sparked in the form of a single desperate action. The Virelians activated their emergency signal, a burst of energy that cut across light years. It was an SOS unlike any other, not just a call for help, but a cry from a civilization on the brink of annihilation. The message carried fear, sorrow, and a fragile glimmer of hope. Somewhere far beyond the reach of their attackers, someone might hear. Few did. Most species across the galaxy ignored the SOS, dismissing it as the desperate plea of a doomed world. But not everyone turned away. Far in the uncharted regions of space beyond the edge of human-mapped systems, sensors picked up the signal, and the response came from legends, creatures and machines forged in the harshest worlds of human space. Humanity's Deathworlders, warriors born of survival, ships built for relentless war, had heard the call. Captain Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, the largest human warship in this fleet, her dark eyes scanning the glowing console. The SOS pulse hit her sensors like a hammer to the chest. It was more than just a distress signal. It carried a resonance that humans, above all, could understand. It said, "Someone is in danger and they need us now." "This isn't a normal rescue," Alara said softly, her voice carrying a mix of awe and determination. "They're telling us we are the only chance they have." Her crew, hardened veterans of countless battles, nodded without question. For them, ignoring a call for help was impossible. They had been shaped by worlds that demanded action, worlds where weakness could not survive. Humanity did not wait. Humanity answered. Within hours, the Deathworlders fleet jumped into faster-than-light space. The Leviathan led dozens of sleek, jagged warships that looked more alive than machines, bristling with weapons and armor that could crush entire fleets. The Virelians, huddled on the edge of destruction, could not comprehend what they saw. From the void above their burning cities, the humans descended, silhouettes of power, hope, and wrath. The enemy that had torn through Virelia had no warning. Before they could regroup, humanity's warships struck. Beams of energy carved through the darkness like lightning, obliterating the attackers' ships. Explosions flared across the battlefield. But even as the Virelians watched in disbelief, they understood that the humans were not here for conquest. They were here for justice. On the Virelian command ship, Commander Lorath whispered, his voice trembling. Who are they? Why would they come for us?" Alara's voice echoed across the comms, steady and cold as steel. "We are humanity. We fight anyone who preys on the helpless," no one argued. There was no time for questions. The humans had made their decision, and it was absolute. For the first time in weeks, the Virelians felt hope flicker like a fragile flame. In that moment, amidst fear and chaos, they realized something extraordinary. Humanity, in all its ruthless strength and unyielding courage, had answered their call. And from the dark reaches of space, humanity prepared to unleash the full force of the Deathworlders. A force born not of greed, not of ambition, but of the simple, powerful principle that no plea for help would go unanswered. Ever. The void of space erupted with fire. Humanity's Deathworlder fleet moved like a living storm. Sleek warships cutting through the darkness with deadly precision. Energy beams streaked across the battlefield, slicing through enemy hulls as though they were paper. Explosions bloomed like fiery flowers, casting their light across the terrified Virelian observers. The humans fought with a discipline and fury the galaxy rarely saw, a combination of strategy, instinct, and raw power that made even the most seasoned soldiers tremble. Captain Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, her hands steady on the console, her eyes scanning for weaknesses. "Target their command ships first," she ordered, her voice calm but filled with authority. "Leave nothing standing that can regroup. Protect the Virelian civilians at all costs." Her crew moved with silent efficiency, knowing every command carried life and death. From the surface of Virelia, the people watched in awe and fear. Children pressed faces against the glass of evacuation ships, and mothers clutched their frightened families, unable to comprehend the storm that had arrived to save them. The Virelians had never seen power like this. Ships that moved like predators, striking without hesitation, shields that could shrug off destruction, weapons that made the enemy fleet crumble. Despite the terror, there was also a strange sense of hope. The Virelians could see for the first time in weeks that someone had come to fight for them. And it was not just skill that set the humans apart, it was their relentless determination. Each Deathworlder warship carried the unmistakable mark of survival, the same instinct that had allowed humans to thrive on worlds where death itself was constant. The enemy faltered under the relentless human assault. Their advanced technology could not match the sheer ferocity of the Deathworlders. One by one, the command vessels exploded, sending shrapnel across the battlefield like deadly rain. Yet humanity did not celebrate. The destruction was a tool, a necessity, not a spectacle. Every strike was measured, every movement calculated. Victory came with discipline, not arrogance. Amid the chaos, Virelian crews began to coordinate with the humans, following their lead to evacuate wounded ships and protect civilians. Captain Alara watched their trembling hands on controls and felt a deep ache. These were not warriors, they were survivors, untrained and terrified. Yet in that moment, guided by humanity's presence, they found courage they did not know existed. Hours passed like minutes, and slowly, the enemy fleet lay in ruins. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the hum of human engines and the soft cries of those who had survived. For the first time, the Virelians dared to breathe, to hope. Humanity had arrived, answered their call, and struck down the terror that had haunted them. Alara looked out at the burning debris of the enemy ships. She knew this battle was only one of many. The galaxy was full of predators, and most of them assumed no one would intervene. But the humans were not just soldiers, they were Deathworlders. And Deathworlders did not wait for permission. They answered calls for help, no matter the danger, no matter the odds. On the command deck, Commander Lorath of the Virelians approached, his skin flickering nervously in the light. I have never seen anything like this, he admitted. You saved us. Alara's gaze was steady, almost gentle, though her voice carried the weight of steel. We do not save because we expect gratitude. We save because no one else will, and because someone has to. The Virelians, still trembling, realized that this was more than a rescue. It was a statement, a warning. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, not just as warriors, but as protectors, and the message was clear. Anyone who preys on the weak will face the wrath of the Deathworlders. As the Leviathan and her fleet prepared to depart from the battlefield, the Virelians looked on with newfound awe. They had witnessed power, courage, and mercy in one terrifying, magnificent package. Humanity had answered the call, and the galaxy would never forget it. The battle had ended, but its echoes lingered across the shattered skies of Virelia. Fires still burned in the distance, and smoke drifted into the violet atmosphere, a reminder of what the Virelians had endured. Yet amid the devastation there was hope, a fragile, glowing ember that humanity had kindled. Captain Alara Voss walked through the Virelian space station, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. She observed the survivors moving cautiously, their eyes wide with awe and lingering fear. Humans were everywhere, doctors treating the wounded, engineers repairing damaged ships, and soldiers guiding civilians to safety. Every gesture carried care, even in the midst of exhaustion. Elder Loras, the leader of the Virelians, approached her cautiously. His translucent skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim lights of the station. I cannot believe what you have done, he said quietly, his voice trembling. You arrived when we thought all hope was lost. You fought. For us. Alara shook her head, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We fight because someone has to. Because life, no matter where it comes from, is worth protecting. We are not heroes. We are human. Laura studied her carefully, searching for some trace of arrogance or pride. There was none. What he saw instead was a deep, unwavering resolve, a courage that had been tempered in countless battles across the galaxy. He nodded slowly. Then we are in your debt. And perhaps we can learn from you. Over the next days, the Virelians began to rebuild. They worked alongside humans, repairing starships, restoring infrastructure, and tending to the wounded. Slowly, their fear transformed into determination. The humans taught them not just how to repair ships or operate weapons, but how to survive, how to trust their instincts, and how to act without hesitation when faced with danger. Children who had spent weeks hiding in fear now ran among the corridors of the station, curious and wide-eyed. They watched the humans with admiration, asking endless questions about the warships, the battles, and the bravery it took to save a world. Ilara observed them from a distance, a faint smile touching her lips. "They will grow strong," she said softly to her second-in-command, "and they will never forget that someone answered their call." At night, the station was quiet except for the soft hum of human engines and the distant crackle of repaired communications. Loris visited Ilara on the Leviathan's bridge, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so empty and indifferent. "You have changed us," he admitted, "not just by saving lives, but by showing us that even in the darkest hour, someone will come, that someone will fight for us." Ilara's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "It is not about changing you. It is about reminding the galaxy that weakness is not always left to suffer alone. Sometimes the strongest answer the weakest, and sometimes that is enough to turn the tide." The Virelians, who had once thought of themselves as small and powerless, began to understand a profound truth. Strength is not measured only by weapons or fleets. It is measured by courage, by the willingness to act when others will not. Humanity had shown them that strength could also mean mercy, compassion, and the resolve to protect life, even at great cost. As the days passed, bonds were formed. Humans and Virelians trained together, shared stories, and learned from one another. The Virelians discovered a bravery they had never known they possessed, inspired by the humans who had fought with unmatched precision and fierce loyalty. Ilara watched the station come alive with renewed purpose. She understood that their mission was more than defense or war. It was a message to the galaxy, that humanity did not ignore cries for help, that the Deathworlders answered every SOS, and that those who relied on cruelty and fear would find themselves facing an unstoppable force. And in the quiet moments, as she looked at the faces of the Virelian survivors, she felt a warmth she rarely experienced in the cold expanse of space. It was the warmth of hope, the knowledge that even in the most hopeless moments someone could arrive, humanity, bearing strength, courage, and the promise of survival. The galaxy had watched the battle, but now it would witness something far more profound: the birth of trust, the forging of bonds, and the enduring spirit of life itself. Humanity had answered the call, and in doing so had changed a world forever. The galaxy is never silent. Even after one battle is won, others watch, waiting for a chance to strike. Humanity's fleet remained in orbit around Virelia, not out of curiosity, but caution. Captain Ilara Voss knew that the SOS they had answered would echo far beyond this system. Predators in distant galaxies would notice the Deathworlders' intervention, and some would see it as an opportunity to test the humans' limits. Days passed quietly, but tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Scouts reported unusual energy signatures in nearby sectors, fleets that had remained hidden until now. These were not allies coming to thank humanity. They were opportunists, predators thinking the humans would not interfere again. They underestimated the Deathworlders. Ilara studied the sensor readouts, her mind calculating every possibility. "They think they can intimidate us," she said softly, more to herself than to her crew. "They are wrong. We answer every call, always." Her officers nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Humanity did not leave the helpless to fend for themselves. That was not their way. When the enemy fleets emerged from the shadows, they expected hesitation. What they found instead was the full force of human strategy. The Leviathan and her fleet moved as one entity, weapons blazing, shields flaring, and engines accelerating beyond the enemy's comprehension. Each attack was precise, surgical, and terrifying. Ships that thought themselves untouchable were shredded before they could fire a single volley. On the Virelian planet below, civilians watched through the repaired observation posts. Children clung to their parents, but even in fear, They could sense something extraordinary. The humans did not fight for greed, for territory, or for glory. They fought for survival and for justice. Every Deathworlder warship was a living statement. The weak would be defended, and predators would pay. In the midst of battle, Ilara's voice was calm over the comms. Do not underestimate them. Strike fast, strike together. Leave no advantage for the enemy. Her strategy unfolded flawlessly. Enemy formations collapsed under human coordination. Even the Virelians, now more confident, assisted with rescues and tactical support, inspired by humanity's resolve. Hours passed, but victory was not without effort. The enemy had numbers, and some managed to land strikes damaging smaller human vessels. Yet, the Deathworlders adapted instantly, their instincts honed from worlds where survival demanded perfection. Shields were reinforced, weapons recalibrated, and within moments the attackers were neutralized or in full retreat. When the last enemy ship fled, silence returned to the sector. The stars, once glittering with the promise of danger, now reflected the calm aftermath of human intervention. Ilara looked over the battle reports, noting the precision, the efficiency, and the cost. Every life saved was a victory, every death mourned, but the message had been sent loud and clear. The galaxy had predators, and the Deathworlders answered SOS calls without fail. Elder Loris approached her again, his eyes filled with awe. They thought the galaxy was beyond hope, that only the strong survive. But you have shown us that courage and action matter, that even the weak have a chance if someone answers their call. Ilara nodded, her gaze still on the dark expanse of space. We fight because we must. Strength is not just about firepower. It is about will. It is about answering the cries no one else will. That is humanity. That is what the Deathworlders teach. For the Virelians, the lesson was profound. Their world had been saved once and then again, not by luck or diplomacy, but by humans willing to face overwhelming odds for the sake of justice. They had learned that courage can be contagious, that strength can be shared, and that even the smallest SOS in the galaxy could summon a force that no enemy could ignore. As Ilara turned to prepare for the fleet's next movements, she knew one truth above all. The galaxy was watching. Some would tremble, some would plan, and some would realize, too late, that humanity did not wait for permission. Humanity answered the call. Always. The shadows of the galaxy had been tested, and they learned that the Deathworlders' light was not to be challenged. Humanity's presence was now a warning. Attack the helpless, and you will face a force born not just of fire and steel, but of unyielding resolve. After the battles were over, the stars above Virelia seemed quieter, but the scars of war were still everywhere. Cities lay in ruins, smoke still drifted across the skies, and the people who had survived carried the weight of fear and loss. Yet amid the destruction, something remarkable began to grow. Hope. Humans moved among the survivors with quiet determination. Soldiers helped lift debris, engineers repaired the damaged space stations, and medics treated the wounded with care and patience. Every human action carried strength and compassion, a reminder that power was not only in weapons but in the courage to protect life. Captain Ilara Voss walked through one of the rebuilt districts, watching the humans and Virelians work side by side. Children peered curiously at the massive warships docked in the spaceports, their wide eyes filled with awe. Soldiers patiently explained their technology and shared simple lessons about courage and survival. Mothers and fathers, once paralyzed by fear, began to smile again as they watched humans help their families rebuild. Elder Loris approached Ilara, his translucent skin shimmering softly in the light of the station. I never thought anyone would come for us, he admitted, voice tinged with wonder. We believed the galaxy had abandoned us, but your people have shown us the strength of compassion, the power of choice, that even the weakest can be protected if someone chooses to act. Ilara smiled faintly, though fatigue lined her face. We fight not for recognition, not for reward. We fight because someone has to. Someone must stand when others fall. That is the human way. That is the Deathworlders' way. The Varelians listened closely, absorbing the meaning behind her words. They had seen the humans' fleet strike down impossible odds with relentless precision, but it was the mercy and discipline that left the deepest impression. Victory had not been cruel. It had been just. Humanity had destroyed the enemy but spared the innocent. They had saved a world without asking for anything in return. As rebuilding continued, humans taught the Varelians more than just repair or combat skills. They taught them to trust, to act decisively, and to believe in themselves. Civilians who had never held a weapon learned to operate protective systems. Soldiers who had been hesitant in battle gained confidence and courage. In every corner of the planet, the presence of humans inspired growth, resilience, and determination. Alara watched a group of Varelian children running along a corridor, laughing as they followed a human engineer demonstrating the controls of a small hover vehicle. The sight brought warmth to her chest, a reminder of why humanity fought in the first place. Strength was not measured only in firepower, but in the lives touched, in hope restored, and in courage awakened. In quiet moments, she would walk to the edge of the station and look at the horizon, remembering the battles fought and the lives saved. Every life matters, she whispered to herself. Every call for help is worth answering. That is why we exist. Even the Varelian leaders began to understand the depth of the human spirit. You have changed more than our world, Laura said during one council meeting. You have changed us. We will never forget what you have done. We will carry your courage forward. And one day, we will protect others as you have protected us. Alara nodded, feeling the weight of her people's legacy. The galaxy is full of those who prey on the weak, she said. But humanity will always remember. We answer every SOS. That is not a threat, it is a promise. And it is a promise we intend to keep. As the day ended, the Varelian world felt alive again. Children played in open streets, citizens rebuilt homes, and the survivors' eyes shone with determination. Humanity had not just saved a world, they had inspired a civilization. In the quiet of space, the Deathworlders ships waited, ready to move, ready to answer the next call. For somewhere in the galaxy, another SOS would arrive. Another life would be in peril, and humanity would be there, unfaltering, unyielding, unstoppable. And on Varelia, the lesson was clear. Strength without compassion is empty. Power without mercy is meaningless, and hope, when delivered by those brave enough to act, could change the fate of a world. Humanity had not only fought, they had taught the galaxy what it meant to be human. Even as Varelia began to heal, the galaxy reminded humanity that peace always comes at a cost. The Leviathan sensors detected distant fleets observing the system, eyes of predators who had taken notice of the humans' intervention. Some were curious, some afraid, and some hungry for opportunity. Captain Alara Voss knew that defending the weak was never without sacrifice. The Deathworlders remained vigilant. Smaller human ships patrolled the skies, scanning for threats while the larger warships maintained their protective orbit. Alara walked the bridge, her eyes scanning the stars that had once been silent witnesses to countless battles. The galaxy is watching, she said quietly to her second-in-command. Every action we take now sets a precedent. Every life we save reminds predators that weakness will not be tolerated. On the planet below, the Varelians continued to rebuild under the guidance of human engineers and soldiers. Civilians who had once cowered in fear now carried tools and weapons, learning how to repair, defend, and survive. Children ran through the corridors of partially repaired stations, their laughter a bright contrast to the shadows of the past. But amid this hope, loss still lingered. Families mourned loved ones who had died in the battles, and human soldiers silently honored those who had fallen protecting the helpless. Captain Alara stood before a memorial on the Leviathan's deck, a wall etched with names of the fallen. Each name represented a life taken too soon, a sacrifice made so that others might live. Every life saved costs something, she whispered. But if we do not act, all life is lost. That is the choice we make. Elder Loris approached her, his expression solemn. Your people grieve deeply, yet you continue to fight. I have never seen courage like this. You do not seek glory, only justice. Ilara's gaze remained fixed on the stars. We fight because it is the right thing to do. Every time someone cries for help, we answer. That is the human way. But the galaxy is harsh, and every act of compassion carries a price. We know this and we accept it. Meanwhile, the Virelians began training alongside humans, learning strategy, tactics, and the unspoken lessons of bravery. They saw that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Every human soldier, every Deathworlder warship, demonstrated that true strength comes from resolve and compassion combined. But the price of humanity's compassion was never abstract. A sudden attack from a hidden enemy fleet reminded them all of this. Though smaller in number, the enemy's assault was brutal and some human ships were damaged or destroyed. Ilara coordinated the counterattack with precision, and the Deathworlders struck back with unmatched efficiency. Even as the Virelians witnessed destruction, they understood that the humans were protecting them at all costs, accepting danger and loss to safeguard life. When the enemy was repelled, silence returned. Human medics tended to both human and Virelian wounded. Engineers repaired damaged ships, working tirelessly under the dim lights of the station. The Leviathan's crew, weary but unbroken, reflected on the lesson that every act of mercy and protection had its dangers, but that it was always worth it. Loris stood beside Ilara once more. "You have shown us more than just survival," he said. "You have shown us responsibility, courage, and the meaning of sacrifice. We are learning to be stronger, not for conquest, but to protect life itself." Ilara nodded, her expression softening. "The galaxy will always test those who defend the weak," she said. "But humanity will never turn away. Every SOS, every call for help is a promise we cannot break. It is the measure of who we are, and it is worth any cost." As the Virelians gazed up at the stars, they understood the full weight of what humanity had given them. Hope, courage, and the unshakable knowledge that even in the darkest hours, someone would always answer the call. Humanity had shown that the price of compassion is high, but so is the reward. Life, survival, and the spark of a future worth fighting for. Virelia's skies were no longer filled with fire and smoke. Cities were being rebuilt, spaceports repaired, and life returning to a rhythm that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. Children laughed again, racing through the streets and corridors of stations while their parents worked tirelessly, guided by the humans who had saved them. Hope, once a fragile ember, now burned brightly across the planet. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, looking down at the world below. The sight filled her with quiet pride. Humanity had arrived when it mattered most, answering a call that no one else dared to heed. The galaxy had witnessed what humans were capable of, not just in war but in mercy and courage, in the steadfast resolve to protect life. Elder Loris approached, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "You have not only saved our world," he said softly, "you have changed us. You have taught us courage, compassion, and the meaning of hope. We will never forget you or what humanity has done for us." Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "It is not about gratitude," she said. "It is about principle. We answer the helpless because it is right. We act because we can. That is what the Deathworlders represent. That is what humanity represents." The Virelians looked at the humans around them and saw a strength beyond any weapon or warship. They had learned that true power was not domination, but the will to act in the face of overwhelming danger. Humanity had shown them that even the smallest call for help could summon a force strong enough to change the course of a world. Above the planet, the human warships waited silently, their presence both reassuring and awe-inspiring, for the Deathworlders' vigilance never ended. Somewhere in the galaxy another SOS would rise, another civilization would cry out for help, and humanity would be there, ready to answer, unflinching, unstoppable. The Virelians worked tirelessly, learning from the humans not only how to defend themselves but how to survive and thrive. They repaired ships, trained new pilots, and rebuilt cities with a newfound determination. Every corner of Virelia now carried the mark of human guidance, a legacy of courage and hope that would endure long after the Deathworlders departed. Ilara reflected on the battles fought and the lives saved. She thought of the ships lost, the sacrifices made, and the victories earned. Humanity had faced enemies that had seemed invincible, yet they had not faltered. They had answered the SOS, protected the weak, and shown that their power was more than firepower. It was a force built on compassion, principle, and the unshakable will to survive and protect. As the Leviathan prepared to leave Virelia's orbit, Ilara addressed her crew. "We leave behind more than ships and technology," she said. We leave behind hope, courage, and a promise. The galaxy will never see the helpless abandoned while we are able to act." Her crew nodded solemnly, understanding that their mission was far greater than a single battle. It was a statement, a warning, and a legacy all in one. The Virelians watched as the human fleet ascended into space. Though sadness tinged their joy, it was tempered by deep gratitude and respect. They knew that wherever humans went next, they would continue to answer calls for help, fight for the helpless, and inspire courage wherever darkness threatened to prevail. In the silence of the void, the stars reflected the departing fleet like silent witnesses to humanity's deeds. And somewhere across countless light years, civilizations whispered the legend of the Deathworlders, the humans who did not wait, who did not hesitate, who answered the call when no one else would. Captain Alara Voss gazed into the stars, feeling the weight and honor of her people's legacy. "The galaxy will remember," she said quietly. "We fight, we protect, and we answer the SOS always. That is what it means to be human." And with that, the human fleet disappeared into the void, leaving behind a world saved, a civilization inspired, and a galaxy forever changed by the unyielding spirit of humanity. The echoes of their courage would ripple across the stars, a promise that wherever cries for help arose, the Deathworlders would answer, and life, hope,